Hello, this is Dan Alford, and you're listening to Dan's Cadre of Experts. I've got an interesting guest today, Patrick Jankowski. Thank you for coming on.
Dan, thank you, and thank you for considering me an expert on something.
I know a bunch of people that look forward to your talk every year, but we're going to talk about that later. Let's talk about how we met in the Houston Economics Club.
Gosh, it goes back 12 years or more.
I think I happened to stumble upon your website, and I attended one of your meetings, and it was held at the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, Houston Economics Club. There are two types of economists out there. There are academic economists and there are business economists.
Which one are you?
I'm a business economist,
okay.
and that's what the Economics Club was set up for. Either business economists or businessmen who wanted to know what was going on in the economy.
That was me.
Yeah, that was you.
Because I was technical, and yet I realized that the economy was definitely playing a big role in my business.
Yeah, it's the way the world works. I mean,
I know that now.
Pretty basic. But no, the Economics Club, we put it together. We're very lucky that the Fed was willing to host us, and we were bringing in speakers from all over the U.S., other business economists, some local, talking about energy, talking about the labor market, talking about demographics. And that's how you and I met. You were in the audience. I can't remember specifically which one, but I remember.
Well, you were president at the time.
I was president for 9 years.
Oh, okay. Well, that doesn't narrow it down.
And that's a few years too many, but it's like a lot of organizations. You get into it and you're reluctant to hand it off. But the other is sometimes difficult to find someone willing to take on the responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And then Jesse's taken it over, and now he's passed the baton.
Yeah, Jesse Thompson, who was an economist at the Fed, he ran it for a while, and now it's Jordan Frisbee, who's an economist with the Port of Houston, and he's the president now. And we just had a meeting on Tuesday, and we had Julia Coronado with macro policy advisors out of Austin. She came in and gave us some insight as to what she saw happening in the economy. I mean, Economics Club's a great organization. I mean, you can go, it's got a big website name, the HoustonEconomicsClub.org. But if anyone's trying to find additional information about the economy, I suggest you show up to one of the meetings.
It's a very exclusive club. You have to pay, $20 to go, right? Yeah. I mean, no, seriously, it's open to the public, correct?
Oh, yeah. And it's $20. There's this concept in economics, barrier to entry.
Yeah.
You don't want to set the price so high that people can't join or participate. So we just set the price to cover the cost.
And you get a meal?
Well, you get a box lunch.
Yeah, well.
Or a box salad, but you're not there for the meal. You're there to hear really good speakers, and you're there to network, meet other people in the community.
Yeah, I attend quite a few of those. And just for our audience to know, you go to the website, you sign up. You have to sign up ahead of time, right? And you have to have an ID or you're not going to get in.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve is probably the most secure facility in Houston. I mean, we joke about it. It's probably more secure than NASA is, with what you have to do with showing your ID and all the security guards and so forth. But it's, that's where the money is.
Right,
literally. So it's going to be secure.
A great group. But you were simultaneously the president of the Economics Club, and your day job was?
Well, I'm the chief economist for the Greater Houston Partnership. Senior Vice President, Chief Economist for the Greater Houston Partnership.
And I've heard that described as a Chamber of Commerce on steroids. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. I use that term a lot.
Oh, do you? Maybe I got it from you.
It is, it's kind of the 900-pound gorilla among chambers of commerce in the region. We were formed, 30 years ago? There used to be a separate Chamber of Commerce. There was a separate Houston Economic Development Council. There was a separate World Trade Association. And the three organizations recognized that their missions overlap, so they agreed to combine. And that's the reason why it was called the Greater Houston Partnership. It was a partnership of those three. Now, those entities have gone away, but those functions still exist. One of the things we do at the partnership is we try to recruit businesses to the region. We try to get them to decide if they're going to open up an office, they're going to expand a manufacturing facility, set up a distribution facility. They might be looking at Atlanta or Phoenix or Dallas. And one of our jobs is to make sure they can look at anybody they want, but we want them to set up in Houston. The same thing, one of the things we do is we have trade missions, and we try to get companies overseas to bring their goods into the Port of Houston, or we try to get companies that are already bringing stuff into the Port of Houston to say, well, maybe you should set up a distribution facility here, not just use support. We try to get them to make investments in the region. And same, we get companies from overseas that are looking to, classic example, they say, we want to enter the U.S. market. And what we're trying to tell them, if we're going to enter the U.S. market, the best place to enter it is through Houston. We're fast growing. We're very diverse. We're very welcoming. Great air connections and sea connections and so forth. That's one of the things we do. The Chamber of Commerce aspect is kind of gets more like where we're policy. We have a legislative session coming up soon, and we will be in Austin advocating for policy, for legislation that supports the regional economy, that supports Houstonians. We're always going and trying to get more education funding. We're always trying to get more transportation funding. And there are other issues in those areas. We're trying to get incentives for business to relocate here. So if it's something happening in Austin that will help Houston, we try to support that. If it's something that maybe would be detrimental to Houston, we see what we can do to get that fixed.
Well, I approve. You support Houston, you support my business. Said a publication, you put us on the cover one time, so I appreciated all that. So to reciprocate, I'm one of the guys that call down to visit with your potential new businesses, and I tell them the things you already know by heart, which is business-friendly environment, good transportation, good schools, good labor force. It's a great place to site a business.
Yeah, and that's one of the things my team does in research. I've got when we're fully staffed, I am looking for somebody right now, another analyst. But right now there are 5 of us, and that's one of the things we do is we put together the data that corporations want to look at when they try to make a well-informed decision. We'll put together stuff on wage rates and labor availability. We'll prepare vendor lists. They may come up with, if they're really looking hard, they say we're looking at 3 different locations. We can tell them what the property taxes would be at each of those locations. We often get questions about the ability to continue to train my workforce after I'm there. We talk about the educational system. Bottom line, the businesses, they're either trying to save money or make money or somehow when they relocate, get out of an environment which is not conducive to them. And we try to show that Houston, they can make more money here or they have less cost here, easier to expand here. It's better for their business overall. And we do that with data.
Yeah, no, and that's what you're really good at, to be candid. And so you publish that every year, right? What's the format?
Well, right now you're talking about our economic outlook event.
There you go.
Yeah, we publish a lot of things. On December 8th is when we have our forecast for 2023. It's something that I've been working on for the last 6 weeks. There's a formal document that will be shared with the people who attend the event on December 8th, and then it'll also be posted to our website. In addition to that, we have a panel of experts. I mean, this is a whole big event. We have a panel of experts. We'll have someone from the finance industry, someone from healthcare, someone from engineering and construction, someone from retail.
Yeah, you had me on one of those. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a great deal of fun.
And ask questions about what are you seeing in the economy. Try to provide whoever's there at the event insights based on these people who run businesses in Houston, what they are seeing in the economy.
Okay, how does someone get to go to this?
Anybody can go as long as you're willing to pay. I mean, if you're a member, you go at a discount. If you're not a member, it's
THEC member.
No,
partnership member.
Partnership member.
Okay.
Partnership member. We've got the easiest website in the world to remember. It's Houston.org. I mean, it doesn't get any easier. And you just go to the events tab there and click through there, and there's a registration there that you can go to. Like I said, December 8th, Hotel Sonesta. It's a lunch. During lunch, panel gets up and discusses what they see going on in the economy. And then after the panel discussion, I will get up and present the forecast for 2023.
And I recommend it. I always thoroughly enjoy that and learn a bunch. And then you get a copy of the published information at the same time.
Yes. Everybody will leave with a hard copy of the forecast.
I'll be there. I guarantee.
Oh, great. Well, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, I always try to make it. So what's your background? I mean, so I just found out a minute ago you're a business economist rather than, so, but where'd you study? What did you study?
How far back do you want to go?
You tell us you're qualified. Convince me you're qualified.
When I was in college, I worked in a paint and body shop.
That's good.
When I was in high school, I sold Christmas trees.
Okay.
Doesn't that qualify me?
You're familiar with labor. You're familiar with sales. Now, this is all part of business.
No, I joke about that. I've probably had 8 or 9 different jobs in my career before I settled into this.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually did some consulting work. I actually tried to sell matchbook advertising, if you can believe that. Remember, you go into a bar and the bar would have matches on there, and I was going out was not a very good salesman.
So I didn't know all this. I tell people my career has been very linear. I've been doing the same thing since I was a teenager. I've been building stuff. And then sometime in my early 20s, I realized people would pay me to do that. But then there's all these people like you that have more circuitous path. And I find that fascinating.
A lot of stuff. This is stuff in high school and stuff in college and stuff right out of college and so forth. I worked in a small manufacturing plant where we made something called a coprolite compound.
Never heard of it.
And it was something that dentists used back then when they were doing fillings. And someone put liquids in 2 different jars, and I put a label on the jar and put it in a box and put the little boxes in bigger boxes.
And you knew there had to be something better.
So I knew I was going to finish college. But no, I've done this professionally. I actually started out in journalism. My background's in economics. I studied economics at UT Austin.
Both my parents taught there.
And what I wanted to do was I actually wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write for the Wall Street Journal. But unfortunately, the Wall Street Journal didn't want me to write for them. And so I took my economics background and my writing background and got into what was referred to as economic development, trying to understand what's driving the economy, what businesses want to know to relocate, and then taking my communication skills and using the communication skills to try to make sure it was communicated properly or easy to understand. I mean, God, one thing about economics, it can be so dull. I mean, I had some really bad professors in college, and I was sitting there going, I know this guy's a brilliant thinker, but he's a poor communicator.
Yeah. And what's the joke? People go into economics if they don't have the personality to be a accountant.
Yeah. I've actually, and I've worked for the partnership, God, for a long time. But I left, I've come back, I left, and I've come back. This is my 3rd time back at the partnership.
Took you back twice, did they?
And they took me back. So evidently, my previous 2 bosses didn't put bad things in my file. But I've been back at the partnership actually consistently since May of 1988.
Wow. So it's been quite a while now.
So it's been quite a while. But at the partnership, I'd worked even in their marketing and communications department for a while. But it's been a wonderful journey, because I went from doing just proposal work to now analyzing the economy and reporting on the economy. And I like to think the fact that I worked so deep into corporate recruiting early in the career, I still do some of that, it gave me different insights into the economy than someone who's just read books and worked with spreadsheets.
Yeah, very practical approach, which is what I need, of course. There's another backstory. You and I just walked through the robot factory just now, and we got into where we're doing the robotic human total knee replacement surgery. It dawned on me that I actually, that relationship that I formed with Dr. Kreutzer here in Houston was through the GHP. So, that may not be your primary mission, but you're connecting, Houston businesses. Well, that certainly worked for me.
Yeah, there are a couple things the partnership's known for. One is for networking at a fairly high level, which you benefited from. The also we're known as a convener. We try to bring disparate parties together to try to solve the region's issues, whether it's a transportation issue, whether it's an education issue, whether it's something else.
Give me an example of that.
Oh, gosh, you'd give me an example. Well, part of it right now, a simple one is workforce development.
Okay.
Getting businesses to sit down with colleges and universities and community colleges.
Oh, excellent.
Get
them to teach the right things.
Yes.
I'm on a couple of board of advisors, and it's a wonderful program. It's frustrating as hell, but it helps to redirect the curriculum towards what businesses need. So
yeah, and that's a real simple example. There are other things right now. I'm drawing a blank, but
okay, no,
I should have prepped better for that question.
That's why we don't script it. It makes it more fun. But all right, so I went to the economics club, which led me to the GHP. I'm members of both now, or I guess it's corporate members of GHP. And so I'm doing all this, and I'm reading books, and I'm studying because I'm trying to learn more about economics. But now I've got one here. So what do you recommend for the other folks that are just like me that have figured out that economics is such a, what do you call it, the dismal science is absolutely essential, because I can't control business cycles, but it's better if I can understand them.
And actually, that's a good point. They're not books that I'd recommend you read. There are lots of books out there, but there are 3 things that I read, and if anybody's going to stay up on the economy, there are 3 things which I read every day that I recommend everyone else read. One thing, I read the Wall Street Journal cover to cover every day. I might not read every story all the way through, but headlines, the first few paragraphs, I'm constantly in the Wall Street Journal. The other thing is I go to the Bloomberg website every day to find out what they're posting at the Bloomberg website. And also I read The Economist magazine every week.
Well, I'm batting 2 out of 3 there. Okay, so you've just changed me.
And that's a start. That's what I do. But there are other things that if you want to know what's going on with the economy, there are, God, I should know how many different Fed banks there are. There are, 13, 15 Fed banks? I should know that as an economist. Every one of those banks publishes something on the economy.
I read what Dallas publishes, because Jesse Thompson.
And Dallas Fed, some excellent surveys. They do a retail survey, they do a manufacturing survey, a services survey.
I'm one of the ones they survey.
Oh, okay, great. And the surveys provide really good insight as to what's going on in Texas. And I'm constantly looking at their surveys. Their energy survey is great because there's some questions they ask every year, the same quarter, and that way I can look at how things have changed over time. But some of that stuff can be a little, I don't want to say nerdy, but a little bit difficult to grasp. But still, there's a lot of good stuff at the different Fed websites. And after that, God,
what's left?
Well, I get people who email me stuff all the time, and they say you should read this article. But I will go to places like the New York Times website just to see what they're saying on the economy, the Washington Post website, seeing what they're saying on the economy, the Financial Times to see what they're saying on the economy. And then the other thing I do as an economist is I talk to guys like you.
Yeah.
I mean, well,
feet on the street.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of data out there, and I look at the data, and when I see the data, then I go out and see, can I get any anecdotes? Are people, what I'm seeing the data, is this happening in real life? Or if I talk to you and you tell me something's happening, then I'll go back and see if I can find data to support it. So I have the data. I'm looking for a backup. So.
Well, a lot of people lately are complaining about oil company profits being at an all-time high. And I can tell you that I'm a part of the oil industry, but we build equipment. And I was kind of looking around saying, hey, it's not quite working the way the news is. And Jesse Thompson's article was superb in that regard. He showed a 10-year trend for all the different segments of the energy industry. And one segment which is down 62% over the last 10 years is equipment. So in this case, a rising tide does not raise all ships. So you have to dig a little bit deeper into this stuff. You can't just read the headlines. But that explained a lot to me when I saw that one.
No, you're talking about equipment, I guess, as a proxy for it, for equipment in general. You look at the rig count.
Yeah, that used to be a phone number you called here in Houston back in the 70s. The Hughes Tool rig count. And we lived and died by it.
Now all you have to do is Google Baker Hughes rig count. It pops up at the different peaks. But if you go back to, I want to say it was December of 2018, we had 1,083 rigs working.
Where are we at?
We're at about 779 right now.
Yep. So we're not drilling here, and I can tell you, you want anecdotes from people on the street? Here's one. I am selling. We just walked through the plant. You saw a lot of oil field equipment in various stages of completion that we're going to be building for valves and drill bits and sand screens and all the other stuff I showed you. Almost all of it's going overseas.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask you, why is that?
Okay, cynical Dan's coming out now. I'm saying it's because this ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance attitude, has made it unappealing to invest in fossil fuels in America. But that ESG attitude has not permeated the rest of the world, and so the rest of the world is reacting to this $80, $100 oil that we're seeing nowadays, because this is fall of 2022, right? And so they're reacting to it as you would do in a normal free market. You would drill more holes, but your rig count is down. And my information, so you're telling me the same thing I'm hearing from Jesse's report is here we're not drilling.
Okay, and there are other things, if I can add.
Good, please do.
Reason why it's down. Forget, was it 8 years ago we had the fracking bust or whatever it started?
Overinvestment.
Wall Street had lent a lot of money to the oil and gas industry, and they never got the return they thought they should.
So they were burnt.
Yeah, so they're burnt, and so they're reluctant to lend now. And so the oil and gas industry is having to fund its exploration at a cash flow.
Ah.
And so that's one reason why the rig count is down. The other is they're making a lot of money right now, so they don't necessarily need to boost production. to make a lot of money.
Well, they're also being threatened with windfall profits tax.
Oh yeah, well that's something else. The administration right now is not doing the oil and gas industry any favors, and there are regulations and restrictions and so forth out there. But it's the late John Hofmeister wrote this wonderful book called "Why We Hate the Oil Companies."
I haven't seen this.
And I'm sure you can get it on Amazon or so
I'm
forth.
intrigued.
And there are all sorts of reasons, but that's the problem. I hate to say this, I think people just hate oil companies in general.
Yeah, we got bad press, bad lobby, or something. But
I had a good friend, and his joke was, well, if you don't like the oil companies, just stop buying their product.
well, and what I tell people, for every calorie of food you eat, there are 10 calories of fossil fuel energy going into the production. So as long as you don't eat, you really don't need fossil fuels.
Yeah, as long as you don't drive,
Yeah.
as long as you don't use any plastics, as long as you.
I think that's going to become glaringly apparent in the near future. But well, so that's why I'm not worried. I think that will become apparent. Let's talk about energy transition. I know that's a GHP initiative, isn't it?
Yeah, we have something called the Houston Energy Transition Initiative.
And so you've embraced this to go green, or what? Help me out with this.
It's not to go green. You need to be careful when you use an expression like that, because that can almost be pejorative.
You think?
Yeah. It's recognizing that society is moving in a certain direction, and we need to make sure that if Houston continues to grow and prosper, we need to be part of whatever that transition is. And we have the Houston Energy Transition Initiative. We have gotten probably every major oil company in Houston has signed on to this. And it's not going solar, or it's not going bio. It's carbon capture, use and sequestration. It's hydrogen. It's all sorts of the whole everything that could go into trying to reduce the amount of carbon which is put in the atmosphere. Doesn't mean we'd give up on fossil fuels.
Oh, thank you.
It simply means that we're going to find a way to use fossil fuels where we emit less carbon. And there are all sorts of different ways to do that.
I think I mentioned I'm an unrepentant global free market capitalist, and so since that's the way I live, I don't think we should go cold turkey. I think it should be a normal transition. And you're an economist; you've seen the graphs that show energy.
You can't go cold turkey.
Right.
I ask. Let me do this. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Go ahead.
Do you know how many barrels of crude the world consumes on a daily basis?
No, sir.
Take a guess.
3 million. I'm guessing. I'm way off, huh?
Way off.
I have no feel for it. Help me out.
We consume 100 million barrels a day.
A day. Okay, I was only off by a factor of 30.
Well, and that's my point is how do you wean the world off 100 million barrel a day habit?
Weaning is the correct process, not cold turkey.
And right now, I think there's a misunderstanding. I don't think anybody's going to cold turkey. It's a matter of how do you continue to use fossil fuels, but in a way in which it's less harmful for the environment. And part of this, how do you capture the carbon, among other things. We will always be using fossil fuels for one way, even if we never put another drop of fossil fuel in a gas tank. We'll still use it for plastic. We'll still use it for heating. We'll
lubricants.
still use it for other things. And if you want to look at it in kind of a broad philosophical, if we find a way to wean ourselves off putting fossil fuels in a gas tank, that actually extends the life of the resource space, because then we have it to use it for something else.
Yeah. What did Matt say in his book, Twilight in the Desert? He says, your grandchildren are going to say, you actually burnt petroleum? It's much too valuable to burn. So, okay. That's good. And I approve of that attitude. It's got to be a slow process. I've seen the graphs, though, where, they'll trace acceptance of new energy sources through time, and it takes decades for something to become a significant contributor. And I thought one thing that was interesting I saw the other day was our biomass usage is at an all-time high. It never goes down. Now, as a percentage of our total energy consumption, it's down. So we're still burning more trees than we ever have in history.
This is totally off the point, but we talk about biomass, and everyone's concerned about what's going to happen in Europe with Russia cutting off natural gas to Europe during the winter and so forth. And my best friend from high school retired. His wife's German, so they retired to Germany. And we've been texting each other back and forth. And I said, Paul, how are you going to get through the winter? What happens? And he sends me back a picture of his garage stacked full of cordwood.
Yep, we're going back to burning wood.
And so that's the thing. And I thought, well, he'll stay warm, but I'm thinking the environmental impact of burning wood versus burning natural gas.
Right, and in a fireplace rather than in a...
And so probably every source of energy we've ever used, we're still using. We're just using more of something else as well.
Our total energy consumption's gone up, so it's dwarfed the biomass, but maybe not this year. Maybe it'll go up. All right, well, I've got an economist sitting here, so to me, my favorite definition of inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. You going to go for that, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you want me to disagree with you?
No, I'm delighted you agree, because that's a nice, simple explanation.
Well, it's classic economics. Everything is supply and demand.
Right.
Okay, so the demand, if you have more dollars and you can demand more, you can purchase more. But if the supply doesn't go up, you're spending more dollars to purchase the same amount of goods. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, the inflation right now, it's a supply and demand problem. And there are a couple of reasons why. One is a little bit, some supply chain, because we still haven't gotten everything fixed there. Part of it is a labor issue, and people are starting to pay more attention to the labor issue with inflation because labor force participation rate has gone down over time.
That's not good, is it?
No, it's not, but it's been going down for the last 20 or 30 years. You know, we have a labor shortage in the U.S., and in classic supply and demand, if you're short on something, what do? You bid up the price of it to either create a greater supply or tamp down demand. Right now, there's something out there called a Job Opening and Labor Turnover Survey called JOLTS, something the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out. They survey businesses like your own, and they ask questions about how many positions do you have on the last business day of the month? How many positions do you have open that are funded and that you're actively trying to recruit for?
What's the trend?
Okay, in October, we had 10.7 million openings in the U.S.
Which is equal to the number of people in manufacturing in America.
Yeah, well, the point I was saying, prior to COVID, we averaged about 6.5. So we're 4 million workers short from where we should be.
Okay, cynical Dan will tell you that there was too much stimulus that put too many people at home.
Well, no, I agree with you. We were seeing it's not as much people at home, but we gave them there's too much money out there. It was we needed maybe one stimulus package. We didn't need 3 stimulus packages. There's God, I wish I could remember the name of the institute that they did a study, and they surveyed people who had received their stimulus packages, and they asked them how they spent each one of them. The first stimulus check they received, or bonus, or package, or influx of funds, they spent about 80% of that and saved 20%. By the time they got to the third package, they were saving 80% and only spending 20%. And so you have all these people with this, or if they didn't save it, they used it to pay down their credit card debt.
And the point of the stimulus, from the government's perspective, is they wanted it spent correctly to stimulate the
and the first
economy.
package is wonderful. That's what we did. Okay. I don't think we needed a second or a third.
Oh, I'm with you. And that's the point. That's why I think we messed up the COVID response both ways. Not only did we create too many dollars through stimulus packages, we also crushed production. So that aggravated the too few goods. So that's the double whammy.
Yeah, exactly.
So why anybody's surprised we're in an inflationary period now, I can't understand, because we pushed both sides of the scale.
Yeah, well, the good news is inflation is starting to go down.
It's a painful process, though, isn't it?
Not yet. No, not yet. Not yet. Let me put something.
How far do interest rates have to go before you consider them to be painful?
Well, okay, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm not trying to finance equipment in my warehouse.
Oh, well, some of us are, but go ahead.
Some of us are. For one thing, we can get separate inflation data for Houston.
Okay. Oh, I'd love to hear that.
And that's every other month we get it. One month we have it, the next month Dallas has it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics does this for some of the major metropolitan areas. At one time, the inflation rate in Houston was running at 10.1% annual rate back in June. 10.1% this year. We just got data for October, and Houston's inflation rate was 7.6. So it is going down. Mm-hmm. And the question is how long will it take for us to get close to 2 or 3%?
That's the Fed's target, is 3?
Fed's target is 2.
2, okay.
But they often use a term like asymmetrical or something like that. So
What's that
they want the
mean?
long-term average to be 2.
I see.
They accept maybe a little bit over 2 sometime, a little bit under 2 sometime, but they want it to average out to be 2 over time. So maybe all they have to do is get it down below 3. But the point I'm trying to make, we are seeing an improvement with inflation, but it's very slow.
So are you attributing that to increased cost of funds? I mean, are they pulling the right levers?
Yes, you are seeing some of that. You're seeing it in anything which is considered an interest rate sensitive industry.
I thought everything was interest rate sensitive.
Well, some are more than others.
I see.
I mean, the easy one to think of is housing, construction.
Very sensitive.
Very sensitive. We're seeing in October of last year, the interest rate, 30-year mortgage rate was 3.1%. Now it's 6.9%. And so you've raised the interest rate. And so if you look at in Metro Houston, a median priced home in October a year ago was about $355,000. Now it's $330,000, so it's gone down a little
Yeah, I
bit.
bet.
But the problem is that change in the interest rate. On average, for a median priced home, it was roughly $1,000 for a monthly payment
It's up now.
for principal and interest.
Right.
That doesn't include taxes or insurance or HOA fees. Now that P&I is $1,700.
Wow. So the house might have gone down by 10%. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but you went up by 70% on the
Yes.
monthly payment. That's huge.
And so as a result, we're seeing fewer houses sold each month.
Yeah.
And we are down in October. We sold 2,000 fewer homes in October of this year than we did October of last year. And so as the demand for housing goes down, you're going to see that price maybe the price won't go down, but it'll simply stop going up. Or it'll only go up 1 or 2% versus going up 16% and 17% like we were seeing earlier. So, raising interest rates is one way to control inflation because you make anything you buy on time more expensive.
So you approve of the Fed's response?
So far, yeah.
Okay.
My concern with the Fed is they waited too long to raise interest rates, and don't put all the blame on the Fed. I mean, that's monetary policy. We had fiscal policy. We were overstimulating the economy.
Oh, yeah.
We were putting too much money in the economy.
We're distorting the free market. That's why I like the free market, because it rewards people for doing things that help others. That's why I love the free market. But when you distort it, bad things happen, and that's where we're at right now.
It's funny. I'm thinking back. I had a wonderful college professor, and as I was getting ready to graduate, he said, "If you don't know by now, there's only 2 answers to every question in economics."
What's that?
And I gave him this is the answer to every question in economics is either supply and demand or government interference in the marketplace.
Okay, that simplified my life.
Yeah, and that gets back to interest rates and fiscal policy and so forth. They were trying to fix things, but maybe they overfixed them.
Well, what I wanted to do today was kind of introduce folks that aren't aware of it to the 2 organizations you work with, because I think they're great. I benefit hugely from my association with them, so we've hooked people up with that. But what you're good at is telling Houston how Houston's doing. You have any comments for me on state of Houston, or do you want to save that for your unveiling?
I'll tell you how Houston's doing. I'm not going to tell you what my forecast is for next year.
I'll take what I get.
I want you to show up to. Actually, Houston's doing very well right now. It is doing incredibly well.
Compared to America, compared to the world,
yes,
where are we at?
Yes.
Perspective.
Okay, let's look at, if you look at the 20 largest metropolitan areas in the United States.
Okay.
We all lost jobs during COVID.
Yes.
Some have recovered well, some haven't. Houston has recovered 126% of what it lost.
That's pretty good.
You look at some place like New York or DC or LA, they're still low 90s, upper 80s.
Wow. And what do you attribute that to?
One thing, we did reopen a lot sooner than they did.
Bless Abbott? Are you going to give Abbott credit?
You can bless Abbott. I'm being agnostic.
Okay.
That was one thing. The other is there's something. Some of the cities that have done the best have been cities. Dallas has done very well. Austin's done very well. There is something to be said about the Texas climate.
Right.
And I'm not talking about temperature and weather. I'm talking about the business climate. But also some of the problems, like places like San Francisco and LA and San Jose, they're so tech concentrated, and they sent their workers home and said, you never have to come back to work again. You can work from home permanently. all the businesses which support someone going into an office, whether it's
Fascinating.
whether it's serving at the lunch counter or the dry cleaning service,
Right. We're all
or the
interconnected.
copy machines and the copy paper. If you're never in the office, none of that stuff is necessary.
That says nothing about potential losses in productivity, but that's another
Yeah.
topic.
Well, the thing is, and I want to bring that back to that 126%.
Okay.
You haven't asked me yet whether we're going to have a recession next year.
I assume we were. We're not.
Be careful with assumptions. Be careful. I'm not going to.
That's why I know economists.
If we have a recession next year,
Yes, sir.
Houston is actually in pretty good shape to handle it because we've gotten back everything we lost in the pandemic and then some. Employment in Houston is higher now than it's ever been before. We're just
really?
shy of 3.3 million jobs.
Excellent.
Now, it'll hurt anybody who loses their job or so forth, but think about LA or DC or New York that haven't even gotten back what they lost in the last recession. And another recession hits them. Think how much they're going to struggle, how much it's going to hurt them. So we are in much better shape than most other metropolitan areas. Of those 20 largest metropolitan areas, forgot to say this, we rank 6th in recovery.
Who's doing better?
Oh, gosh.
And why? And what are they doing?
I'm
we're not
trying to
doing?
remember, but Dallas, Atlanta, I'm trying to think
I'm
of
surprised.
some of the others. But I wish I had, I've got that on a slide,
I'll come see you.
but that tells me I need to make sure I put that slide in my presentation on the 8th.
I've always heard that after World War II, the one reason the American economy flourished and others didn't is because everybody else's industry was in ruins, and it's kind of like we're the only baseball player with a glove, and it worked out really well for us. And I see in Germany they're shutting down industries.
One of the problems Germany has is they depended so much on cheap energy from Russia. Chemicals as either a feedstock or chemicals to power the plant. And right now, if the policymakers in Germany are having to decide, do we heat homes or do we run our industry?
But that's huge. If they have to kill their industry, that we win by default. Is this? I'm just curious. I haven't seen much about this, but is this going to be as significant as I think it might be? Or
Something I'm watching.
Good.
What will happen with, there's concern if there's a recession that the demand for petrochemicals and plastics will decline because manufacturing decline, housing decline, and so forth. But if some of the production capability is shut down because of the lack of natural resources in Europe, maybe it'll be a wash, maybe there'll be more demand. It's something I'm going to be watching. Some of the energy companies out there or the chemical companies say they're expecting to see a drop-off in demand for their products. And some are saying we don't expect to see it because of other factors like I just talked about. I mean, energy-intensive industries in Germany are shutting down.
Right.
Like aluminum smelters and stuff like that.
well, that work's going somewhere.
Hopefully it'll come here.
Right. Okay. Fascinating. Well, I'm looking forward to your talk in December. What have we missed? What else do you want to bring up today?
What else do we want to bring up? Dan, I could talk to you until midnight. How much time do we have?
We got a lot of tape.
Thing is that I'd have to text my wife and let her know why I'm not home for dinner.
Well,
so.
we're going to get you back again. I'm just giving you one last chance because I need a crystal ball. I'm trying to plan my business, and the thing that saves me is I'm global and I'm in every industry. And a lot of my friends here in Houston, they're heavily invested in oil, and whereas I'm working defense, I'm working electric cars, I'm doing everything, and so my trick is diversification. But nevertheless, I love to be able to see the future to help me plan. So,
Okay, well, I'll let you. Okay, one last thing I want to share with you. My biggest concern about the economy right now,
what's that?
it's not data. It's not what I'm seeing in the numbers. It's the conversations I'm hearing.
Really?
We're going to talk ourselves into a recession.
Oh, just like I just tried to a moment ago.
Yeah, everyone sits there and they think, well, I'm reading it in the papers, I'm hearing it, things are going to be bad. But if you look at the data, if you look at it, I mean, it is so ridiculous. And I've had 2 family reunions since June. Cousins I haven't seen in 2 years. Okay, when they come up to me, they want to know how my grandkids are. Yeah. My granddaughter is. They want to know, if I've taken any trips. No. They want to know what the economy's doing. It's
That's
a
what you're
family
good at.
reunion. I don't want to talk about the economy. I want to talk about family. Everyone is so obsessed with it, and we're going to talk ourselves into recession. But if you look at it, there is the conference board Conference Board does a survey.
Okay.
They did a CEO survey. And they asked the CEOs, how many of you expect us to be in a recession next year, in the next 12 to 18 months? 98% said they expect us to be in a recession in the next 12 to 18 months. They asked them, okay, what are your hiring plans? 40% said we plan to continue hiring.
Doesn't sound like a recession, now does it?
No. They asked them, what are your capital investment plans?
You're going to buy?
80% said they're either going to maintain or increase their capital investment.
Well, that's the best kind of recession, one where you grow.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Is, yeah. And if they're true to that,
it's not a recession.
It's not a recession, because what are two things that happen in a recession? Job losses and pull back on capital investment.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess where I get it from, my cynicism comes from the fact that I thought that the Fed raised rates to slow the economy, which is...
It's what they're trying to do.
Okay.
They're trying to control inflation.
Well, and they're pretty good at it. You know, I lived through the 70s. You know, I saw these outrageous rates. My first house payment was, or my first house loan was 13% interest. So I know what they can do if they pull the levers. So I'm assuming they'll succeed.
Dan, yes, and a couple of things. I remember the 70s. I worked in a grocery store back when you had label guns and you put labels on it. I come, after high school, I was in high school, after I'd get off from school, I'd report to work, and my boss would say,
raise the price on everything.
Yeah, he'd give me a sheet of paper or a couple of sheets of paper and a label gun. He goes, these are your price changes for the day. And I'd sit there and just change. I remember the inflation. Mm-hmm. One of the things people need to know, though, is if you look at a recession caused by interest rate hikes, they tend to not be as severe as those caused by something else. Think how severe the COVID recession was when we simply shut everything down. Or how severe the Great Recession was when we had almost a near total financial collapse.
I was there.
Those were deep and painful, but interest rate recessions are not quite the same as a recession caused by some sort of catastrophic event.
All right. Okay. Well, I listen to you, so I'm gonna be guardedly optimistic. And just so we can end on a high note, I just came back from Atlanta. The biggest trade show we are involved in is called FabTech. It's a metalworking show, and that was last week in Atlanta. And the vibe, every show has a vibe. And this was a positive, optimistic vibe. So that's my report from the streets. You're right. There is some optimism. Maybe not here in Houston, but in Atlanta there was.
Well, it'll be interesting. One thing I'll be trying to get a better insight into the backlogs. Construction industry has a great backlog right now in Houston. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to get some insight into the backlogs for manufacturing as well. I subscribe to something called Dodge Data.
Okay.
And through September this year, we've had $31 billion worth of construction contracts issued in Houston through September this year, compared to about $23 billion last year.
At some point, it's overshoot, though. So are we in the overshoot phase?
Well, no. Part of it was everyone was rushing to get their projects financed prior to the interest rates.
Money was cheap.
And so the point is if you got these backlogs, that's going to be something to maintain you in 2023 until you, and hopefully by the time 23 is over and getting the 24 interest rates will start to go back down and new projects will be financed.
Well, when COVID came around, my big push was we have nothing to fear but fear itself. So maybe I ought to listen to my own words and and be more optimistic. And I can tell you, just this week, our backlog here at Arc Specialties has gone up. So, all right, I'll try to share your optimism. And I got to get you to come back on again. This has been fascinating.
You don't have to share the optimism; just don't spread the pessimism.
Indeed. I'll try to do that. What else you have for us?
Just if I can, once again, a pitch.
Go ahead.
For December 8th, that's the Outlook event. We have panelists from finance and from retail and from healthcare and from construction engineering. They're going to be talking about what they see happening in their industry in Houston in 2023, and then I'll be providing the forecast for Houston. If you want to have some insight as to what direction Houston's economy is going to take next year, show up to the event. You'll hear the panelists, you'll hear me. You get a hard copy of the forecast when you leave the room.
And the details are all on Houston.org.
Houston.org/events.
I recommend it. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'll be there. Well, thank you, Patrick, for coming on.
Dan, thank you very much. Well, this was a hoot. This is actually a lot of fun.
Well, I learned something, and that was my goal. So I hope our audience did too.
Well, the same thing. I hope your audience has learned something as well.
Okay. We'll see you again soon.
See you again soon, Dan.